Dial H number 5, written by China Mayville, art by Mateus Santaluco. This is, as far as I can tell, wrapping up the Abyss Void plot thing going on. So we open up with Nelson, Manteau, and Squid all facing down against Ex Nihilo. And Ex Nihilo is the only one who's transformed into something via the dial. And is trying to call Abyss to help her out. However, Abyss isn't showing up. Abyss is off doing other things. So Squid launches a acid attack at Ex Nihilo while Manteau and Nelson make their escape. And Nihilo makes an attack on Squid, which basically just decimates his body. Like, he's got 100 holes in him now, and there's no way he's going to be able to do anything. So Nelson has the dial, and he needs Manteau to fix it. They go back to her place and start putting it together, whatever they can. And at this point, Nelson's like, we never actually formally introduced each other. Hi, I'm Nelson Gent. And we find out that Manteau's name is Roxy Hodder. So Roxy gives her backstory of how back in the 60s she was she was going for a PhD in literally telephone technology. And she lived in a commune which was just discussing these massively huge ideas of it says, take Fuller's Zonohedra as a model for space-time is the one thing that we've got here. So not your typical hippy-dippy stuff. Anyway, one day she stumbles across the dial and realizes that's something special and proceeds to become Manteau. So Nelson's keeping an eye on the news, seeing if anything comes up, and they see that Abyss has appeared downtown, but also that Squid is dead. Like, he's dead in an alley, and there's nothing that they can do. So at this point, Nihilo, whose name is Wald, but I'm just going to keep going with Nihilo. Nihilo has dialed again and got one that Manteau was familiar with. It occasionally happens that there are repeats, and this one is extremely powerful, named Harbinger. It's like Harbinger, but with hair. So Wald goes up and talks to Abyss and is like, hey, why'd you leave me alone? I thought we're in this together. And Abyss just is like, I'm hungry. He uses a lot more weird words than that, but that's the basic gist of it. And so Nihilo tries controlling it using her null magic. And he's too powerful. He can't be controlled with the null magic anymore. He's out to just feed on as much stuff as there is. So at this point, Manteau has put back together the dial. It's ready to go, and it's ready to... He's like, we got to get something spectacular in order to fight Abyss. Something like a really strong one. And Nelson's like, no, it's my dial. I'll do it. And she's like, you are nowhere near qualified enough to do this. I've been doing this for years. And he's like, all right, fine. Let's just toss a coin. So as Roxy goes and gets a coin, Nelson just takes the dial and dials it. And immediately Roxy's like, yeah, no, we're dead. So cut back to the fight. Nihilo's trying to hold back Abyss, trying to control it. There's tanks in the area. Soldiers are trying to get all people evacuated. And Roxy shows up and is like, okay, the dial's not fixed, your form isn't stable, and you got a horrible hero. We shouldn't be doing this. And Nelson's just like, get the Squid, he'll find out what to do. This is a job for Cock-a-Hoop, which is literally a rooster head and wings on a hula hoop that just rolls into battle. Yep. So it comes in, he attacks Nihilo with a sonic cock-a-doodle-doo, and then proceeds to make her dizzy by hooping around her. But then he starts to falter. He turns back into Nelson for a second. And then we see up above military helicopters who arrived to attack Abyss, and they fire off missiles at it, but it just eats them, absorbs them, and then also proceeds to absorb the helicopters. Then it looks up at the moon, and we find out that it's literally eating the light coming off of the moon. So at this point, there's also a bunch of smaller voids around, tinier ones, bigger, smaller than Abyss, and Cock-a-Hoop is able to dizzy them up and get them all confused. And so Squid comes up with the plan of, okay, if Cock-a-Hoop can get them dizzy and disoriented, and Ex Nihilo can boost their power with her null magic, they can redirect them back at Abyss, and the voids will eat the void that is Abyss. It is a void consuming a void. So they pass up the plan. They say, all right, let's do this. And they start redirecting all of the smaller voids into Abyss, which does work. Nelson, throughout it, he loses his abilities. The dial conks out, but it is still just enough that Abyss is unable to fight back. And all of his smaller voids devour him. And Squid points out that when a void eats something, it leaves behind nothing. But when a void eats nothing, it leaves behind something. So Abyss starts turning into a giant colossus of stone. And as he's crumbling up, he's like, what's happening? And Nihilo's like, this is death, you're dying. And as he's about to crumble up, his face is the last thing to do so. And out from the face of Abyss comes another dialer, another person with a dial. And it zooms out very quickly, going after Ex Nihilo, and is just changing heroes like super rapidly. Nihilo's not able to keep up, and she's immediately knocked down out of the sky, and the dialer steals the dial that Nihilo had right off her body, thus turning her back into her human form as she plummets down to Earth and is killed instantly. The dialer then, just before Abyss's face finally closes up, manages to get back into the Abyss and is sealed off for good. So that was the shadow on the line that they've been hearing about. This person who's been around, has been in the dial network, and they can feel it, but they don't know who it is. So soldiers come in, they see everything that happened. The dial is destroyed, like the core of it was taken out and taken by the dialer. So Nelson and Roxy just make their way back home, and they're like, okay, well, we're not done yet. There's still a lot of craziness going on. Whatever the hell that was that took out Nihilo, we got to find out that. And regardless, we still have one dial left. And they hold up the dial that Nelson was using. And it's like, and we got to figure out what happens when he shows back up. So that's the end of that. I understood this last issue. I feel that this would read a lot better on a reread of knowing each of these characters, knowing like, okay, Nihilo is this particular one. You got Squid, Wald is the same as that. Like knowing where each character is, you understand what those earlier issues are saying even, because it gets really confusing with all the names being thrown around, especially when you have 100 different heroes as well. It just gets very lost in the shuffle. But having now finished it, having now hit the end of the arc, I believe it's good. It's a very solid story. I never thought that it wasn't. It was just confusing to get through the first time around. So overall, I'd say that this issue, it was a creative ending. It did some good characterization. It brought in a whole new big mystery that I am definitely intrigued into. So overall, I got to give this one like an 8.5. It's very well done. Highly respectable work by both the art and the writing. And I really can't fault it beyond that. So Dial H continues to do very well by me.